Welcome again to another episode of That's My Dad. James Pullen is here. Might call him Jamie occasionally. He's just a little guy. He's just my little friend. Now, I'm only, 3 years older than you?
Yeah, 3 years older.
So we've been buddies since middle school. And we were just sitting around before we went on the air talking about some good old times. But James came up. It's a long 5.5 hour drive to be here, and he's in town for some other business. So thanks for coming, Jamie.
Oh, I'm glad to be here.
So let me introduce you to folks. First of all, you've been married to Emma for 31 years. I went down and stayed with you. Emma is a sharp lady. I went down to stay with you for a few days several years ago, and Emma was remodeling your kitchen.
Yes.
Had a miter saw and everything. Man, it made me feel bad. I'm thinking, how poor James, his ego must be shot.
Yeah, she can do anything. Yeah, she's talented and fearless and just, take on anything. Beautiful.
Beautiful and everything. So James is, y'all been married 31 years
31
now,
years,
right?
Yep.
Got 5 kids, Jackson, Jared, Janie, Sarah, and Sadie.
Yes.
And 1 grandkid, Brad.
Brad, Brad with the R. So it's
Brad, okay.
Yeah. In the 80s, yeah.
So you had to confuse me on that one.
Yeah,
right?
exactly, yeah.
All right, Brad, good deal.
Yeah.
So Jamie, by the way, if I call you Jamie, it's because
that's fine. Yeah, that's what. All my family, that's what they call me. So
that's how you know who's your close friends.
Yeah, exactly.
Jamie.
Exactly.
So they say that the proof is in the pudding. That's an old saying we have. So, man, your kids came and spent the day with me here a while back, and I'm so impressed with your 5 kids. And so that tells me that you know something about being a dad. You figured out a secret, something, and we're going to try to dig into that. So to get this thing started, why don't you just start by telling us about your kids?
Yeah, so the oldest one is Jackson, and he's married. I have a wonderful daughter-in-law, Terry, and they were high school sweethearts. They're married. Jackson's a financial planner and works in. They actually live in Flowwood, right beside us. So then there's Jared. Jared works at Duke University for football operations and equipment, and then we have Janie, and she's a rising senior at University of Alabama, majoring in communications and advertising. And then we have Sarah and Sadie, the twins, and so they just now finished high school, and they're going to be starting Vanderbilt University in the fall. So.
Right. Yeah. So, but all your kids are just super solid Christian kids, and they've also managed to get into some kind of interesting jobs. Like Jared was a manager with the New Orleans Saints.
Yes, he was. He was with the Saints.
And we'd be watching the NFL and say, "Hey, I know that guy. I know his dad." And Janie's got. She might not want us to talk about. She's kind of in a little connection with a little high profile situation there.
Yeah.
So. In Alabama, at Tuscaloosa. And then you're probably getting tired of hearing about this, but your babies were co-valedictorians.
Yeah, they were, they did very strong academically.
Yeah, and both scored a 36 on their ACT.
Yes, yeah, both.
Which proves that
they take after their mother, right?
That's right. It's the old genetics versus environment. They didn't take after their daddy because we went to school. A 36, both of them scored a 36. Yeah. I was just telling you before we came in, I had some guys that scored a 36 at the ranch, but it took 3 of them to do it. Each of them scored a 12.
Yeah, exactly.
So you got to be proud about those guys, about your kids. So tell me, what's the secret? I mean, what did you and Emma do to bring up such, not just smart kids, but responsible and respectable kids?
Well, it's really, I can say, I tell people I'll probably count my wise decisions on one hand. Only done, I think, a few things very well. One of the things, we did was something that my parents gave my brothers and I that was very special was, when Emma and I moved to Mississippi, we moved there from Richmond, Virginia. We were there probably 2 or 3 weeks, and at that point we, visited like one other church, visited a church after being down there about 3 weeks, and that's what we just decided this is our church, and it was Lakeside Presbyterian. It's been a great church for us to raise our kids in, and that was something my parents, they raised my brothers and I in Bellevue Methodist, right up the the road here, so. we had that consistency in our life, and I think that that's one thing that we were trying to give to our kids was that consistency. So they have a faith family, around them, and I think that's one of the things that has just really been, real, beneficial for them. We have people who kind of support all the things that we're teaching them, and so it's been just a great, family of people. So you surround your kids with other believers, and I think that's something that we had growing up. And I know it's not always the case for everyone. Everyone can't do that. It's either move or it's hard to find. There's no perfect church out there, but I think sometimes just put your kids in that situation. And even this past year when Sarah and Sadie graduated, some of the notes that people from the church wrote. You just have a lot of people in their lives, I think, and then and the other thing that I've tried to do with my kids, and I know you've done this a lot with your kids, is teach our kids to serve, and and that's all my kids have been on mission trips with me. We've all been to the same place, seen the in Belize,
go to Belize,
yeah, Belmopan area, Belize, and just for my kids just to be there and serve. And I think, I can see that in all their hearts. They all have a kind of desire to serve. And that's, right. I think that's something that you can do with your kids. Both those are things that don't really cost anything, but, I think they can have a huge impact.
What do you think that does to a kid to go to another country? What does it do to them emotionally, mentally, spiritually?
Yeah, I think it's a great experience. I always tell people, a lot of times I'm in, Belize, I get as much out of it as I feel like I give. I get way more out of it. And just being, they get to see, how other people in the world live and, what other people in the world have, it's not, and just kind of how, one of the things I'm always moved by the people in Belize is how they serve each other because, they don't have a social safety net and, it's really people just kind of take care of each other. And that's the thing that's a great thing for kids to see, It's not as much about, just seeing what other people don't have, but just seeing how much they care for each other. I think that's one thing, you probably see a lot in, Central America is just people, they just take care of each other. And families, take care of, older members, and that's just,
they do. I've spent a lot of time there. I know what you mean. So you think exposing your kids to those type things and surrounding them with the right kind of people really helps a lot in that parenting process.
Oh yeah.
So your mom and dad did that too.
Yeah.
Let me go back a little bit for the sake of the listeners, because Jamie, you and I are such good friends. I think we just jumped into this thing, but your older brother Jerry was my 9th grade football coach and a mentor and a guy that I just think the world of to this day. And your other older brother, Joe, is one of my best friends today. And Joe and I get together every week now. But I had the honor, when I retired, of helping you guys take care of your dad. And your mom and dad, your mom's still living. She's in a nursing home and suffers with dementia. But your dad passed away 3 years ago, I think. Two of the most wonderful people I've ever met. So if you would – take us back to what it was like growing up. First of all, as the little brother of Joe and Jerry, but tell me about your dad and the impact he had on your life.
Well, both my parents had a tremendous impact. My dad was just I tell people my dad made life very hard on us because he set such a high example. It was always kind of hard to kind of live up to that. My dad was a very interesting person. He had one thing that, a lot of people didn't know until, kind of right up until the end was, he'd fought in Korea and been in combat in Korea and was decorated over there. And, I think that shaped a lot of the way he kind of saw things. I remember, he's always saying, count your blessings, anytime anything happened, it was always count your blessings. I think that's because, just what he had seen. Growing up, and he grew up in Anniston, Alabama. Growing up, he had seen his older cousin, who's more like an older brother, was killed in the Battle of the Bulge. And so, I think for him, and then what he saw in Korea, which he didn't ever talk about Korea, but, from his diary and just, the entries and everything, he saw some pretty, difficult things. And, he was, I think it put things in perspective.
Yeah.
he never hardly got rattled. If you
No,
ever,
no.
yeah,
He's always cool as a cucumber. I took him to the doctor's appointment when they said, "Hey, you got cancer on your neck," and I was like, "Well, I've got cancer on my neck," and I'm
Yeah.
like, I would be freaking out. But yeah, he's never got rattled about anything. I always kind of had a jovial, not a carefree, but a confident kind of demeanor about him. I'm curious, what kind of dad did your dad have? Do you know?
yeah. So it was interesting. My father, he had my grandfather was Doc Pullen was his nickname, and he was from lived here in Gadsden. So he started working when he was 14 years old in a steel mill here in the steel mill, right, near where you grew up. And so, he worked in the steel mill at 14 to support his family. And, and then he went and did, some other jobs. But he was a great father, and it's just always been interesting to me because he never knew his father. His father was actually a Civil War veteran. He was, and so his father was, old when he passed away when my grandfather was like, 3 or 4 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So what that led to was, my grandfather, though, he had some, just great traits he passed on, and he formed a really, incredible family with my father and his 2 twin sisters and, my grandmother, and they were, were members of Wilmer Avenue Baptist Church in Anniston, and he wasn't very outspoken about his faith, but he was very solid, and he was very caring and very loving, and and I've always wondered kind of where that came from because he didn't experience any of that. I mean, there's not a much, 14-year-old kid goes into steel mills in Alabama. I mean, what led him to make some changes or
Yeah, that's got to be a message to our target audience with the podcast, which is guys who are growing up without a father. That's where my heart is to reach those guys. Your grandfather lost his dad when he was 3.
Yeah,
had to go to work when he was 14, but he figured out how to be a good dad. And look at what he did. Look at the generations. Yeah. I mean, you're 5th generation now or 4th, whatever it is, of good solid people, solid citizens, solid Christian people.
Yeah.
And it's just a matter of choice. And I think that's a message that we've got to get to the young men out there who would say, well, I didn't have such a great upbringing, so my family's not going to be so good. No. You can turn it around. You can be a script flipper, as we call them on the podcast. That's interesting that your granddad, I didn't know that. I want to ask you, Jerry, your brother, called me the day your dad died, or I called him one. And he said, I said, how do you feel about it? And he said, before my dad died, I got to talk to him and tell him everything I wanted to tell him. So we've made it a tradition here on the podcast. It's a little strange to some people, I guess, but what would you like to say to your dad?
Well, first, I guess, just thank you for just the love that you showed for my brothers and I. It was just tremendous. And, just the way in which you loved our mother, I don't know if I ever got to tell him that, but that was just, he was so in love with her. And that was just such a great example for my brothers and I, and just looking at our marriages, I hope that we've held on to that, and just the way he always provided for us and he always put us first. And just the way in which, he just led us and just, all those days of just doing everything right, whether, it was just, getting up every morning, going to work, not complaining about anything. And just, just the way in which he led us, and just that gift of bringing us to church, getting 3 little boys ready for church every Sunday morning.
3 Pullen boys.
Yeah, exactly. And just, the putting up with the wildness and everything, but just the fact that he did that and just what a wonderful gift that was, his faith. The thing he left us with, most prized thing, and what I'd like to say to him is, just those prayer journals that just seeing how he was praying for people at the end of his life, and just, the tremendous, gift that's been to us, just to be able to read that.
Yeah, he left a journal of how he met your mother and their courtship and everything. Yeah. That's awesome. I wish we all had that.
Yeah.
So, Jamie, James, the, you're about a month away from the empty nest. Am I?
Yeah.
Right? I've been there. I can tell you it's not easy. You're going to be – there's coming the day that you and Emma are going to sit down at the table and there's going to be 5 empty chairs. How often, by the way, did you guys sit down? When everybody was home, how often did you have dinner together?
We tried to eat dinner, as much as we possibly could, eating dinner together, and always asked one of the kids to pray, and it's always been just a great, because that's something we had. We took turns praying, and just try to sit down as often as possible. It's hard with sports and just hectic schedules, but I think that's something we always wanted to do, and sit down and eat together. And
How important do you think those dinner discussions were in the development of character in your kids?
I think it's huge. It's a lot of times, one thing that I see a lot is, I think a lot of times people, especially social media fuels this, Facebook, that there are no perfect families.
Right.
Even though we think they're a perfect family,
everybody wants you to think that.
They think they're perfect families, that everything's great, and those were opportunities. You get to sit down and just hear kind of what's going on. And I think a lot of times on Facebook, people want to have these magical experiences. They share crazy vacations and things, but really what your kids need is they just need time. They need, you just need to be present. I think for parents, sometimes, and I hate, it's probably, but sometimes we have to, put down the phone, put down the golf clubs, fishing poles, turn off the TV, just, it's just, and just be there with them, and, listen to what's going on, and, hear the stories about, and because, it's generally over time. If you think you're going to get it all done in 10 minutes when they walk in the door, you're kidding yourself. But, if you wait, a lot of things come out later. The more you're with them, all of a sudden something will come out that, you kind of find fascinating, or, something you didn't know was going on in their lives. They'll kind of share it with you and everything. And
well, what would you think is the key to being a great dad?
Gosh, I think that you have to make that your number one priority. I think that of all the things that we, try to accomplish in life, that'll have the, the most no one knows what your, bank account balances are when you die. No one knows, all the things that, you and I, we played in some very big football games. Football games where there are 10,000 people there screaming, and but no one's going to remember. Most people can't even remember those games. But our kids, those are the things that will last. Those are the things that that's what will really last. And it's kind of the, like my grandfather, talking about what he passed down to my father, and those are the things that really have eternal value. And I think that that's what is as parents, we just have to, you have to focus on that. This is the most important thing. This is the most important thing you ever do, So, and I think, it's funny because I think, as men, we're naturally fighters, but, this is kind of the one thing worth fighting for. But, but we argue about everything else. We argue about Auburn, Alabama football, or, different things, and people, go back and forth, and, they want to fight about, things, politics and everything. But this is, your family is kind of the one thing that's, should be the most important thing, I think.
You've kept it a priority, and, man, you deserve a lot of praise for the family. And I kind of started down this road. The day's coming when, and it's not too soon, it's just weeks away for you, where you and Emma are going to be sitting around that table, and there's going to be 5 empty chairs.
Yeah.
And you're going to look at each other, and a lot of people are going to say, what was I thinking? Because they're going to have a attic full of trophies and travel ball.
Yeah.
And they're not going to have those memories that you've built. So we thought we're going to give you a little gift that you can sit down and look at when you and Emma get to that point. Your kids did a little something for you. We want to share that with you.
The thing I like most about my dad is his willingness to serve and help other people with such a positive attitude. No matter how busy he is, he's able to help others with such grace and compassion. Never seems to be an annoyance or an inconvenience to help someone when they're in need or when somebody asks for help, no matter the situation. That's something I've always admired about you.
One thing I've always loved about my dad is his genuine kindness and positivity. Anytime I'm having a bad day or going through anything, he always has a great positive attitude about it and a smile on his face, and he can really help me see the light at the end of the tunnel whenever I'm struggling with anything. He's also just the kindest person I know. He goes the extra mile for everyone around him, not just his family, but anyone in his life. He just truly has a servant's heart. He really just wants to help those around him and be kind and really show them, that he's there for them in any way that he can. And I just think that speaks to so much to like who he is as a person. And I've always strived to be like him in that way.
The thing I admire most about my dad is his commitment level to his family and his church. It's second to none. It's how he spends the vast majority of his time. I've seen him get home late in the day from work and then turn right back around and go to a long session meeting that night. The five of us are extremely blessed to have such a godly example in our lives.
The thing I like best about my dad is that he has so much patience and compassion for everyone, even people he doesn't really know.
Dad, I'd like to thank you for being an amazing role model and for setting such a positive example for us of how to show grace to others and be kind. Thank you for always giving the best advice, and thank you for always being there for all of us.
Hi, my name is Emma, and I'm married to James. This past June 2nd, we celebrated 31 years of marriage. We have 5 children, 1 grandson, and another grandchild on the way. James and I met in college, and I knew very quickly that I was going to spend the rest of my life with him. And he has been a wonderful husband and a wonderful dad. But he had a little bit of a cheat sheet. His dad, Jerry, was just a wonderful and godly example of not only a man, but of a dad and a husband, a grandfather and a father-in-law to me, and we miss him terribly. But he was a great example, and James tries to emulate him in his life. And so as a result, we have a wonderful dad and a wonderful husband. James is exceptionally kind. He never meets a stranger, and in fact, he's had so many conversations with strangers that were so enthusiastic that I had to ask him, well, did you know that person? And he says, no, I just met them, but they were having a great time. And this happens a lot, where he just meets someone and they become instant friends. James and I have always tried to raise our children in the church, and we always had them there when the doors were open. And he's also been the spiritual leader in our home. And one of the things I loved about him as a dad, at night when he would tuck our children into bed, he would say, I love you and God loves you. And I asked him about that one night, and he said, well, that's what my dad always said to me. And I said, well, your dad still says it to us. And he was always pouring words of affirmation and love and encouragement into all of us and total strangers that he would meet as well. So we've had a great example, and James has had a great example. And we are fortunate and blessed to call him ours. We don't tell him that enough, but we love him so much, and he just means the world to us. And on a side note, James thinks the world of Scott and of Scott's ministry. And Scott comes up quite a bit in our conversations. James will say, well, Scott Hilton would say this, and Scott Hilton would say that. So James has the utmost respect for you, Scott, and loves you like a brother. And we are fortunate and blessed to call you a friend. So thank you for this opportunity to allow me to brag about James. And thank you. Bye.
Wow. So how does that make you feel, James?
Oh gosh, that's incredible. What a great gift. It's like if you never got anything else for the rest of your life, that'd be
yeah.
Like all Christmas and Father's Days and everything else. It's all taken care of. Birthdays wrapped up in one present right there. That's incredible. Thank you for doing that. What a blessing.
I started out with it by saying the proof is in the pudding, and you're at the end of the the biggest stretch. You never quit being a parent, but in a few weeks you're going to understand what the empty nest is like for hopefully briefly, because you got those grandkids.
Yeah.
But congratulations, James, and you've done a great job, man.
Well, thank you, Scott. I had a lot of great teammates. I think what Emma said. I'm just so proud of what you've done here.
Thank you.
And just the way you what you accomplished in your life, just taking care of these kids here in Gadsden. And, I think I had one teammate make the Pro Bowl. One of my teammates from Tennessee Military Institute made the Pro Bowl game. And then I had another teammate, Brian Buffton, was commanding officer Marine One, flew all 4 presidents. But I think I'm proudest of you, Scott. And
Thank you.
everybody, you've done some incredible things here. I appreciate what you've done, and I appreciate you doing this podcast.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. We better wrap it up, or we're gonna get the desk wet.
Yeah.
All right, thanks again, buddy.
Thanks.
Appreciate you. That'll conclude this episode of That's My Dad, where we're inspiring young fathers to become great dads, and we're seeking to break cycles of generational fatherlessness. Thanks again, James. See you next week.